Welcome to another week of data mining. Just putting things into perspective in terms of the overall data mining process. During the first part of the course, we were focusing on data exploration and data pre-processing. Last week, we began to move into the modeling phase of data mining. We began to look at the classification problem. Classification is one very important kind of data mining or machine learning problem, where you know the identities, the group identities of each of the individuals in your data set. And you have a lot of features of those individuals, and the problem is to try to identify a set of features that will enable you to accurately classify members of the data set, and even new members that you haven't yet seen. So we began looking at this last week by looking at individual features and how well each individual feature could classify the samples. And we began looking at ways to validate or evaluate how good a particular classifier is. We began looking at things like true positives. And it's really important to understand these terms. So let me just review them again. A true positive is a sample that is in the positive group. In this case, in our problem in this course, the positive group is an individual who has the disease, who has cancer. A true positive is an individual that would be classified as being positive when that individual actually is positive. A false positive is an individual in the negative group or the control group, or an individual that does not have the disease, cancer. But our diagnostic test or our classifier incorrectly classifies that individual as positive. In other words, if you go to get a test for cancer, you get a positive result, but you don't actually have cancer. That is not a good thing. You do not want to be getting a positive result for cancer if you don't actually have it. So you don't want false positive readings. However, it's probably not as bad as getting a false negative reading. A false negative is when you actually have cancer. You are in the positive group, but the test tells you that you don't have the disease. You get a negative test result when you're actually positive for the condition. A true negative, the fourth group, is a negative sample that was diagnosed or classified by our model as being negative. So an individual who does not have cancer was correctly diagnosed as being negative in the test. That's a true negative. That was our introduction to classification. We're going to spend a number of weeks moving into much more sophisticated models for classification. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at a basic bread and butter kind of classification method called decision trees. Decision trees are pretty intuitive to understand. If you want to go through a diagnostic procedure, you might follow a decision tree. You might have followed decision trees and not even realized it. Where you check one condition, and if that condition is true, then you go and you check another condition, and if that's true, then you look at a third diagnostic attribute of your system, and if that's false, then this is the case, and here's how you fix it. That's one walk through a decision tree. A decision tree uses multiple features, multiple attributes in order to diagnose a problem. So what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks in two parts is building a decision tree and then using a decision tree to make classifications of samples. Once you have a decision tree, you can walk through the tree, and each different path through the tree is referred to as a classification rule. We'll begin this week by building just the root of a decision tree and two children of that root node of the tree. So we'll have a root, and 2 leaf nodes, representing an initial step of a decision tree procedure. And this will enable you to build the basic infrastructure that you need to build a more full decision tree. And in the following week, we'll take what you've built in the coming week and make a complete decision tree greater than depth 1 and use it to classify samples. One bit of coaching advice as your data mining coach for this week: it's probably not going to be possible to use Excel this week. Either this week or next week, I think you're just going to find it impossible. So I hope you've been building a code base that you can use, because you're probably going to need it. You're probably going to need to just throw away your Excel model and jump into full-time programming in order to solve this week, next week's problem, and all of the problems for the rest of the course. I look forward to working with you over the coming week to build your first rudimentary decision tree. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.